Whether you like it or not, Keir, the public have a right to be heard and have their legitimate questions answered. Hiding behind your parliamentary majority will only see you through, if you're lucky, just one term. If you have the courage of your convictions, Keir, and I don't mean the jailing kind, you, Keir, should be afraid of no one. Removing a picture of an iconic woman tells me everything I need to know.
Keir Starmer has been an utter disaster for this nation, and Nana Akua is done with him, just like the rest of us. She destroyed him live on TV, and Starmer has no response for her. He's so speechless and ashamed that he avoids her at every press conference, and that just goes to show just how scared Sir Keir is. But what did Starmer do that led to this humiliation ritual? The answer might be in the countless blunders he has made since the start of his government.
Now, it started with riots, which is just a fact. People were jailed for hurty words and prisons were emptied early of some pretty unsavoury characters to make room. But guess what? Many of those unsavoury characters are already back behind bars. So what was the point?
Right from the get-go, Sir Keir proved himself to be a softie who can't keep us safe or properly punish crime. His socialist ideology shined through, but we didn't realise just how bad it would get. He released people early from prison, and guess what happened afterwards? They committed crimes again and went right back. Moving forward, things kept getting worse with each passing day.
We've endured Freebiegate, Sir Keir Starmer accepting money for clothes, £16,000 of which he declared as money for his private office, and gifts. Angela Rayner, Rachel Reeves, all on the Lord Ali gravy train. A load of the front bench Labour MPs, including Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, have also accepted Taylor Swift tickets. Then Taylor gets a police escort with the level of protection only given to working royals but denied to Prince Harry.
Starmer endlessly complained about cronyism and politicians being corrupt, but then went ahead and proved that he's the worst of them all. The entirety of Starmer and his gang turned out to be receiving huge gifts from Lord Ali and other liberal elites. For what reason do you think they were receiving these gifts, and what did they give in return?
As the party brag about closing the last of the coal mines, so we'll be reliant on China for virgin steel. It's absurd. They've even changed the planning laws so they can bulldoze through rural areas to erect unsightly pylons, which will no doubt be built using imported steel so we can offset our carbon.
The Labour Party shut down another coal mine and then bragged about being environmentally friendly and whatnot. But what they failed to mention is how else we'd get energy and the steel that was being produced in these mines. Starmer went ahead and agreed to import all of these resources from countries like China and India. In what world is that a good idea? The countries that are open allies of Russia. The whole situation is a mess that's way worse than you can imagine. Making us dependent on them is insane. This was just a list of disasters they mentioned they'd commit. It gets worse with things they promised to not do.
All of this whilst introducing policies that they never mentioned in their manifesto, like removing the winter fuel allowance from pensioners, which by their own analysis before they were in government suggested that up to 4,000 pensioners would die as a result. And they are turning Britain into a country where investors are running for the hills. Yesterday, we learned that the loose lips of our new Transport Secretary Louise Haigh may cost the UK a £1 billion project.
The Tories were the ones to suggest removing the winter fuel allowance, and Starmer let out scathing remarks against them. A Labour report proved that around 4,000 pensioners would end up dying as a result of this insane policy. And guess what Labour did? They went ahead and implemented it. Starmer proved himself to be a hypocrite above all. Not only that, he has made an enemy out of the pensioners, among many other demographics.
Despite the gloomy rhetoric, Labour inherited the fastest growing economy in the G7, low inflation and falling interest rates. To put it mildly, their first 100 days, irrespective of where you stand politically, have been a disaster for this country. And to be honest, I'm not sure how much more of this I can take. Let me sum it up. Incompetent amateurs who are smashing this country to smithereens.
Starmer spent a good couple months complaining about the economy being in the shambles, but that was a clear lie. They inherited one of the fastest growing economies in the G7 and went ahead to destroy it. Things were bad before, but Starmer made it his personal mission to further ruin things instead of improving them. How else do you define this other than pure incompetence? Nana's fed up with it, and so is the rest of Britain.
In a way that was pretty popular, whether or not our viewers agree. There have been some problems, though, which arguably are of Labour's making, or at least Keir Starmer did nothing to rectify the issues quickly. For example, of course, the Freebies scandal, whereby Keir Starmer and other members of the government received tens of thousands of pounds in freebies from Lord Ali. That left them open to accusations of hypocrisy, champagne socialism, etc.
A good bunch of the problems that Starmer is facing is of his own creation, or at the very least due to his inaction. To put things into perspective, they received tens of thousands of pounds in freebies. That's on top of Starmer's already generous salary. How much more money does this guy need?
This Labour government are doing irreversible, lasting damage to this country, damage that will be felt in decades to come. Take the bragging of proudly closing the last of the coal mines with nothing yet in place to take up the slack. Thousands are now out of work as a result, with no immediate job replacement. Why do that? The green agenda, meaning we will lose our ability to create our very own virgin steel, which is far superior.
The coal mines have been closed and we have no working alternative for it. The consequences of this are pretty clear and you're not going to like it. Even if you look at the immediate impact of this policy, thousands of people do not have a job anymore, as if unemployment wasn't already bad enough in this country.
Meaning we'll have to import it from China to meet our needs to build ugly and, in my view, dangerous pylons, solar panels and wind turbines. We won't be able to make them in the UK. Rather, we'll be shipping everything from places like China and India. Think of the carbon for all of that. Oh, we don't need to. We've offset it. What a scam.
That's their alternatives for our energy, importing steel from China to build old-school pylons and solar panels. Ask yourself if that will be enough to power Great Britain. We'll be hit by increasing energy bills and even more taxes to make up for the difference, and in the end, it still won't be enough according to Sakil and his out-of-touch policies. If you think that's not enough, Starmer keeps adding on to his humiliation, and his most recent move was to hand back the Chagos Islands.
The other day, the government handed back the Chagos Islands as, I suspect, a gesture of guilt for empire, a move initiated by James Cleverly, originally rejected by David Cameron, and finally implemented by possibly the world's worst diplomat of all time, David Lammy, who will surely go down as the worst Home Secretary ever. Fancy calling the potential leader of the free world, who you may have to deal with, a neo-Nazi sociopath. Way to go, David.
These islands are an incredibly important military base, and handing them back is perhaps the most idiotic thing to do at a global level. Even Trump is against it and is trying his best to strike it down. To make things worse, this mess is being handled by David Lammy, of all people, the worst possible person to handle sensitive foreign policy issues. This is the same guy who said utterly disrespectful things about Trump and is probably going to ruin our relationship with the USA. This is the same Labour that set up their stall on the claims of integrity and honesty.
In the meantime, the things that we can't do, we are going to China and places like that for them to do it, so we can offset our carbon, so we can brag about the fact that we are not using much carbon, which isn't really true. Wouldn't it be better for us to just carry on making those things here, because there's a lot of carbon transporting them as well, until we are already set up for this new age of energy production? Surely that makes more sense. Currently in those steel-making areas, thousands of people, Port Talbot, they've been put out of work.
The whole excuse they're using is immediately debunked. Starmer brags about being environmentally friendly and trying his best to lower our carbon emissions, but what difference does it make if the coal is still being used? The only difference is it's China instead of Britain, and the environment is still getting worse. In fact, the carbon emission has increased this way. The transport costs and waste only add on to it further.
Well, a stall where the front, many have pocketed freebies, and in the latest, a long list of embarrassing, hypocritical incidents, they're now selling croissants. They need to be held to account for, in my view, their woeful mismanagement of this country, a country that, if we're not careful, will be destroyed by their collective greed.
No matter how you look at it, Nana's not wrong in calling Starmer and his gang greedy. They're drunk on power and are utter hypocrites. We need to hold them accountable, and that's already happening to a degree. People are calling for another general election, so this government might be booted out sooner than you imagine. As for the Chagos Islands situation, it's getting worse by the day.
Let's quickly move on to the Chagos Islands, because a lot of people think that that has now become sort of like that's lit the match for other places to now leave the British sort of empire, as it were. I mean, obviously we're not an empire now, but do you know what I mean?
I don't believe for a 1 second this jeopardizes the status of the Falklands or Gibraltar or the other overseas territories.
Starmer had emboldened more and more countries to demand the same things. They see that the government is weak and pathetic under Starmer and will definitely try to scam us with as many demands for reparations as they can. We're already watching this happen, and Starmer will probably bend the knee for that too. Guess how much Starmer's planning to pay to the Caribbean government?
King Charles and Sir Keir Starmer are set to face a demand that the UK pays £200 billion in compensation for its role in the transatlantic slave trade. 15 Caribbean governments have decided to put slavery reparations on the table at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Samoa later this month. Of course they have. Who doesn't like being given pots of money because they believe they've been wronged?
A staggering 15 Caribbean countries have banded together in demanding £200 billion from Starmer as reparations for the slave trade that happened centuries ago. That's right, they've seen that Starmer is weak and are trying to exploit this. Who do you think is going to pay for all this? Where will the £200 billion come from? You might have guessed the answer, but it gets worse.
You know what this is, don't you? They've seen how woeful and weak our government is. They've watched Foreign Secretary David Lammy flippantly hand back the Chagos Islands, Labour using their vast majority to get policies through unchallenged. And these countries have thought, we're onto something here. David Lammy has also in the past said that he would take the responsibility of being the first Foreign Secretary descended from the slave trade incredibly seriously.
Starmer handed the Chagos Islands back on a silver platter and is now paying a lease to use the military base there. If that's not a weak leader carrying out humiliating actions, then I don't know what is. As this ramps up, Starmer and David Lammy are making an enemy out of Donald Trump and our American allies by actively trying to undermine him. The USA is not ready to let go of the Chagos Islands, and opposing them will not end well for Starmer.
Even if we were to agree to reparations, who do we pay? Just because my skin is considered black doesn't mean I am one of the wronged party. This country is also full of people from all nations. Should they contribute to the pot paid just because they live and work in the UK? I mean, where do you think the money's going to come from? And for those receiving the funds, for all we know, they might be descendants of slave owners, because the trade did not happen without the cooperation of many from those very nations demanding the reparations.
There's no practical way to find out who the reparations go to. They're so historically illiterate that they don't know how a good number of black people facilitated the slave trade. Will they pay reparations too? The truth is, the entire matter is just an excuse to squeeze more money out of this government. Right now it's the Caribbean. Soon enough, more countries will join in too.
That's the argument, that basically these communities have started so far behind because of treatment, particularly in the Caribbean, that something needs to be done now in order to bring them up to a level that's at least approaching some kind of equity, really.
Yeah, but wouldn't some of the slaves have built infrastructure and things like that? There would be some sort of benefit to the people in those countries. And also, lots of people who are Caribbean and other descendants live in this country. So ultimately, the money that will be used to compensate them would be, the British taxpayer would be paying for this, surely.
Nana rips into Starmer for all of this. At the end of the day, Starmer's incompetence will only burden us with more taxes. That's £200 billion worth of more taxes from our collective pockets. He's a soft leader, and a prime example of this is how he's dealing with illegal immigrants and the crime surge that Britain is facing.
I mean, look, first of all, they're having a laugh, really, aren't they? They are asylum seekers. They are coming here to this country to claim asylum because apparently they've been persecuted or fleeing some sort of persecution elsewhere. So the fact that they're here, they've committed crime. That's the end. You've committed crime. You've come here to seek asylum. You come to my house and you think you're going to mess it up. You think you're going to say, I'll kick you out. That's it. There should be there's no two ways about it.
It's a complete mockery of this nation and its justice system. Starmer let these immigrants in and they're breaking the law. The worst part is that they're getting away with it. The justice system does not punish them as it should, and Starmer's been completely soft on crime. Nana is right that people are welcome in this country, but if they think they can do whatever they want, they must be sent back. And what has Starmer done about this? An utterly useless attempt at fixing the broader problem.
Will the Labour Party do anything about it? I don't know. I'm not impressed with border command control. I think it's just a rehash of what we've already got.
Well, it also doesn't really exist at the moment.
Well, it's marketing, isn't it? And how long is it going to take Sir Keir Starmer to wrap all that up? It's going to take months, years. You're not going to get deals and negotiations and everything with all these things. And then the worst thing about these particular cases are they have been given sort of sentences that will hang later, so that if they are granted asylum, now they can't really work properly. No one will employ them. So now they become dependent on us, the taxpayer. I say, chuck them out, send them back.
The supposed border control plan that will somehow fix the problem of illegal immigration, and so far it has failed. Obviously it was going to fail. There was no thorough planning behind this, and the deals he had to negotiate with the rest of Europe are nowhere near completion. Typical of incompetence that we've come to expect from Sir Keir.
The bottom line is this, right? It's really simple. You are an asylum seeker, you've committed crime. What I would like to see from this Labour government is that they get rid of people who have committed crime and are waiting for asylum. It's so straightforward. They don't need... I mean, you can have a very brief courting system. If they want to appeal, then they need to pay. If you want to appeal something where you've come into somebody's country and you've committed crime and you don't agree with the thing, then you need to appeal. You pay for it. We're not paying for that.
At the end of the day, it's as simple as that. Starmer needs to get his priorities straight and be strict on crime so that people are deterred from committing them again. If they think they're being wrongly accused, then sure, they can appeal it and seek justice in our legal system. Britain has always been built on justice and freedom, and nobody is wrongly punished. So, the solution is much easier than Starmer's border plan, and it's just humiliating for him. More importantly, petty crimes aren't the only concern here. Our women are at risk.
That is another issue here, which is, the safety of women.
Well, that's right, and a lot of the countries where the people have come from, women are subservient in some of those countries. So, you're dealing now with a very different culture, and this guy was caught on camera doing that, and it was actually a camera operator who alerted the police to his behaviour.
Right.
So, I think it's the safety of women, of course, and the fact is that they don't even get punished properly, and then he can claim that he can't really speak the language properly. The reality is they need to be punished, because otherwise there's no disincentive.
Most of these immigrants are from Muslim countries that have a vastly different culture. Women are treated much differently there from Britain, and that puts the safety of our women in question. If Starmer won't punish them for crimes like theft, what will he do when the crimes keep escalating to even worse offences? Needless to say, these crimes already occur, and it's only getting worse by the day. Nana lets off a scathing rant, this time directly aimed at Starmer and his lack of leadership. Let's just say she's not holding back.
Conviction politician Sir Keir Starmer is not. I suspect that's why he couldn't bear to have the image of Mrs. Thatcher looking down on him. In my view, she was everything that he's not. Next to the Iron Lady, he's more like a Tin Man.
Starmer's conviction and lack of leadership skills are painfully obvious, which is why he ordered the portrait of Margaret Thatcher to be removed. He couldn't bear to look at a leader who stood up for her ideals, and compared to her, he is just a tin man. Starmer is crumbling, and the honeymoon period is long over. We all gave him a chance and he bottled it.
Since Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, I, even though he was not my choice, was prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt and support the democratic vote. I use the word loosely because only about 20% of the electorate voted for him, but that's the system we've got, and more fool us if we didn't go out and use it. But with every passing press conference thus far, Keir Starmer has declined to take a question from GB News. Why? What's he afraid of?
He didn't exactly win the election with a majority, but even then we gave him the benefit of the doubt. Surely Keir Starmer wouldn't have been that big of a mess. Turns out we were all wrong, and he's not only humiliating himself, he's making a fool out of all of us as well. Is it completely over for Starmer? A single glance at his track record is enough to find out the answer.
Judging by Keir's first 8 weeks and his latest missteps, like removing the winter fuel allowance from pensioners and that on independent schools, which ironically wouldn't be allowed in the EU and has failed every time it's been attempted, he'll be lucky if he lasts even 1 term, let alone 3. He's already got the civil service regulator breathing down his neck. They're about to launch a review on appointments by the party after accusations of cronyism.
From the pensioners to the farmers, Starmer has made life miserable for all of them, and they're all outraged. People are demanding change, and that might be in the form of a new general election very soon. The private sector is in shambles due to all the tax hikes, and we've got only Starmer to blame for it. Meanwhile, the public sector is thriving, and that's just clear hypocrisy and socialist bias from Starmer. So, how long will Starmer stay speechless?
Whether you like it or not, Keir, The public have a right to be heard and have their legitimate questions answered. Hiding behind your parliamentary majority will only see you through, if you're lucky, just one term. If you have the courage of your convictions, Keir, and I don't mean the jailing kind, you, Keir, should be afraid of no one. Removing a picture of an iconic woman tells me everything I need to know.
The people are raising their voices, and Starmer keeps running away from answering their questions. At a recent farmers' protest, Starmer ran away from the back door to escape the angry farmers. That's just one of many incidents, and it goes to show that even Starmer knows how incompetent he is. Like it or not, Keir, the public deserves honesty and accountability. It's your right and something you can demand by liking this video and subscribing to the channel.